Oh, you get to do that. Okay. Now I can continue talking. So yes, as I was saying on Monday about the challenges, the mindset required. I mean, it's not a park, right? It is not, and it is not easy money. Okay. So if you want something that is going to be easy breezy, then this is probably not the vehicle for you. But if you want something that you're going to build that is going to last, that is going to be sustainable, that you can create an income out of, then this is your vehicle. And I think was it Monday or yesterday, I talked about just a comparison between how soon I started seeing returns when I bought my first property versus running a business, which takes a lot longer to start seeing returns. You know, I've been in this coaching business for people get surprised when when I tell them I've been here for 4 years, you know. It's not like people out of the gate were signing up for all my offers. Now they do and are in, you know, I've got clients in my mastermind, I have you all ladies in here, but it wasn't like that, right? And it took a good, I would say, 2 to 3 years to build that momentum. But with property investing, you can literally build that momentum the day your first property investment is registered in your name, if you do the due diligence and if you follow the blueprint that I have shared with you. Now, just a reminder, because some of you have asked, oh my goodness, Rebecca, I love what you're talking about. How can you help me and hold my hand to make sure that I'm making the right decisions? So just as a reminder, Cashflow Queen is the live course that I talked about yesterday and is on offer for you all ladies. No one else is getting this offer, so you won't hear me talking about it on social media, or the price point I'll be sharing there will be very different to what you all have access to. So that's going to be at $167. And I am adding a coaching component to it. So typically I sell it as a course, a DIY course for you to just learn. As I mentioned yesterday, we only have 1 hour every day. And while it seems like a lot of time, there is only so much I can say in the 1 hour. But with the Cashflow Queen, you have access. It's a 12-part course, which you can literally consume over the weekend. But then over and above that, I am adding in 4 coaching calls in the first week of December, so Monday to Thursday. And in those calls, you will have access to ask me any question you want, bring your property potentials. We do the numbers if you want me to look at your numbers. I'll review any offers that you've you know, that you want to put in. If you have any offers from banks on financing, bring them on those calls and we can talk through them. It makes the world of a difference when you have a mentor, when you have someone who has done this before, who can show you things that, or blind spots that maybe you haven't thought about or that you haven't seen, or even show you opportunities that maybe have not come apparent to you. So that's an opportunity that is such a no-brainer for every single one of you to be in there. I didn't mention this yesterday, but I am only going to take a maximum of 10 women into Cashflow Queen in the live course and coaching component, because I cannot have, you know, we have more than 15 women in here today. I cannot have that many women in the Cashflow Queen calls, because then it's going to dilute the level of coaching that I can give you all. Okay. So that's just for you to be aware of. And then secondly, if you want one-on-one support, so my eyes on your exact opportunities, me doing the due diligence for you, helping you run the numbers, helping you make sure that you're making the right decisions, questioning some of the opportunities and really being in the details with you, helping you with my checklist. I have so many due diligence checklists. I have so many different pitch decks that you can use to pitch your request for financing to banks, because it's not just a simple thing of submitting a loan application and hoping everything goes well. There is nuances that are required in order for you to get the best financing deals. And we'll talk about that a bit more today. So you want me to do the due diligence for you and to help you so that you are equipped and empowered and ready, like literally by the end of that one-on-one call, you should be able to go out and make an offer confidently, knowing that this is a property that is going to cash flow for you, right? And even if you don't want to own properties outright, and I'll be talking about that tomorrow, and you want to adopt a different model where you are helping property owners manage their properties and their rental on a short-term basis, which is what I am doing as a co-host now. I can help you do that. I can help you set it up, and I can help you set up the systems and processes so that it is not onerous on you, something that you can do without having to work an extra 12 hours every single day. Okay, so Cashflow Queen is $167. It is 80% off for you. That is available until Friday midnight. And I'm going to drop the link here again. And then the Profit one-on-one 60-minute call, you can add it on to your Cashflow Queen purchase for an additional $333. So you're going to get it at $500 when everyone else is getting it at $666, I believe. So make sure you grab the opportunity to work with me and to get your property investing on the right foot. You do not want to be making decisions that could be better, right? Or you don't want to be making decisions that you're going to regret down the line. Okay. So grab those. The promo code is Queen. So make sure you put the word Queen in the checkout in order to get the discount. If you have any questions about it, as always, let me know. My team member, Kenny, is not on the call. She's actually in Nigeria, so her time zones are a bit different to ours. But if you have any questions, feel free to let me know or drop an email with Team Wealth Queen at hello@rebeccak.co. Okay, let's get into today's conversation all around smart financing. So we've talked about finding these properties, and I'm sure the next question in your mind is, okay, how do I actually buy them? Where am I going to get the cash? Where am I going to get hundreds and thousands of dollars to buy these properties? Well, you're in the right place today because I am going to talk about smart financing and other means of raising capital, because going to the bank to get a mortgage is not the only way. It is one of the ways, and it's probably the easiest for you as a corporate earner, but it is not the only way. Okay. So before I even go into there, I want to just take a pulse check. And I want to know if there's anyone who has actually financed a property investment before. Just drop a yes in the chat so that I can gauge where we all are at. And if you haven't, that's absolutely okay. That was me actually sitting. Today is November 20th. Yeah. So my first offer to buy a property investment was on, I think it was on 1st of October 2023. So just over a year ago, that was me. And so there's absolutely no shame if this is the first time you're hearing about this. Now, before I even talk about financing, I want to demystify this concept of debt, because a lot of the advice we have heard and we take a lot from is from, quite frankly, middle-aged men. If you look at the finance experts out there, most of them are men, middle-aged, and many of them are making good money, right? Or are living okay lives. And so if those are the kind of people you want to model, all well and good. But I know that you're on this call because you want an extraordinary life. You want to have an above average life. You don't just want to continue living the way you've been. You want things to be different. You want to have that freedom of choice. And now smart financing is the biggest opportunity that I see for women from financially disadvantaged communities to create wealth. Because quite frankly, no one is going to come and give us a big trust fund gift. If you do have access to trust fund money, well and good. But most of the Black women I've talked to do not have access to that. We do not have rich uncles who are willing to give us $100,000 to give us a good head start into buying our first few property investments. And so in the absence of that, what I see a lot of women try to do is, and they tell me in the DMs, and some of you may have told me the same story, is, oh, well, I'm trying to save towards my first house. And when I ask them how much they're saving a month, it just isn't congruent with how much I know an average property is going to cost them. Like if you're saving $100 every single month or 10,000 shillings, it's going to take you multiple lifetimes. You will not even have saved enough by the time you are retired and 60, especially if you're just putting that in a typical bank savings account. And something needs to change. And if it weren't for financing, I would not be on this call teaching you the strategies that I have acquired. Now, it's not just about financing, it's about smart financing, because we can get financing to buy anything and everything, right? We can get loans to buy cars, we can get loans to buy phones. I mean, there is a wide spectrum of why people use credit cards, why people use overdrafts. Now, that is not the type of financing I'm talking about. And it's so interesting how our mindset is very different when we are talking about credit card debt or overdrafts, which maybe in the past we have used to buy not so smart, to make not so smart financial decisions. But when it comes to financing an income generating asset, suddenly that feels very risky. It's actually 10 times riskier to buy something on debt that is never going to make you money, because you're always going to have to take out from your pocket to pay for it. And you're always going to have to take out more than that thing costed in order to pay for it back. Okay. Now, the financing I'm talking about is when you're using debt or when you're using other people's money to buy an asset that is going to make you money. Okay. So you're not just buying an asset, you're not buying a car. This is not even buying a house for you to live in. That's not smart financing, right? A house that you live in is not an income generating asset. It is an emotional decision driven by emotional needs. It is not a property investment, right? Unless it is making money for you. Of course, you can sell it down the line and make money, but for the purposes of income generating assets that we're talking about here, that are going to make cash flow for you as regularly, if not more than your paycheck, then the car, the house that you want to live in, that's not the kind of asset that I'm talking about here today. Okay, so smart financing is when you take out debt to buy assets that are going to generate income. Now, this asset is going to appreciate over time, tick. And when that asset appreciates over time, guess what? Your net wealth also appreciates over time. And now you have even more ability to take on more financing, right? Because you have more assets in your name on a net basis. But again, you're also earning an income from this income generating asset. And that income is meant to pay for the debt servicing that you took out to own that asset. Okay? Drop me a yes if you are following me. Drop me a yes if this is making sense, because this is very different to traditional debt that many people take that lands them in trouble. Okay? So unlike bad debt, which always takes away from you, this kind of debt is one that actually puts money in your pocket, or at the very least is one where you do not have to take money out of your pocket. And you can use the income to fast track your. Just because now you're making more money from a property than the debt service that you have to pay on it, doesn't mean that you have to use that extra income to buy the handbag, to go on the vacation. It gives you the option, but doesn't mean that you're going to exercise the option, right? Options are very valuable. And depending on how you utilize that income, you can fast track your freedom even more. Because when you reinvest that income back into more properties, or when you keep that income and you put it in a high yield investment account, you now have an even bigger nest egg the next time you want to buy a property, and you're able to use that money for a down payment. Or if you want to, you can use it to capitalize a business that you've been wanting to start off. Right? So there's so many ways you can use this income to fast track your freedom even more than if you just used it to pay yourself all the time and, go on the fancy vacations, which we all want, right? But discernment. You're all queens in here. You have the ability to discern and know that just because an option exists doesn't mean you're going to exercise the option. Okay, so 4 things must hold true for this type of financing to be smart financing, right? Now, you should be able to negotiate this smart financing instrument, right? You should be able to negotiate, even if you don't have much leeway, there should be some leeway to negotiate, right? So it shouldn't be something that, the bank just has the first and final say in how much they're willing to give you. And it becomes negotiable when you do the work to find those properties that have potential to appreciate in value, that are potentially undervalued. So you're actually asking the bank for less than the property value, which is a win for the bank, right? And you should have some sort of leverage to negotiate the terms of the financing. It's typically, like I said, in the previous slide, it's taken against an asset. The asset must generate income. That is a non-negotiable. It must generate income. And even better if it generates income from day one. Sylvia, I'll answer your question shortly. And then the income should be enough at least to service the debt. Even if it's not making money for you initially, if it is at least covering your basis so you do not have to take from your pocket, that is a good financial decision. Okay. Okay. So let me, I don't know what's happening with my mouse today. All right, so let me see what Sylvia is saying here before I continue and share the different types of smart financing. What's your take on buying off-plan property? Are there other downsides if you're dealing with a credible developer, apart from the fact that you won't start earning income? Okay, good question. Good question. So, and this is very popular in Kenya, and many people have made money, but many people have also lost a lot of money. So I would say it's very important to put the developer to task, right? And make sure that you have protected yourself in the legalities around the investment. And so if the developer is not willing to commit to a timeline to having the property up and ready, I probably wouldn't go for an opportunity like that. Another important thing to do, and I talked about this yesterday in day 2, is also to get a valuation on the property. So and I speak from experience, one of the properties I bought it straight from the developer, but it was ready. However, it was actually overvalued. So yeah, wasn't in hindsight, maybe I could have done better in terms of the investment I made there, but I still like the fact that I made that investment because it gives me the option. It has given me the option to be able to rent it out. Like we've been fully booked on that property since we started renting it out. And then over and above that, I was actually able to get full financing, 80% financing for it. So the mortgage that I'm paying on it isn't as high. Now, that's very different to buying a property that is just, it's still an idea on paper because your money is going to be tied in there. So I would, like I said, protect yourself and also negotiate the terms. So the lower the amount that you can put in as a deposit, the better off you are, right? And it goes without saying that you need to make sure that the developer has like wins or success stories, right? So if this is a first-time developer, I probably wouldn't, yeah, I probably would shy away from first-time developers because they do not have any, they don't have any credibility in terms of, you know, past projects that they've been able to complete on time, that have increased in value after completion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So Sylvia, let me know if that answers your question, but I think it's very important to protect yourself and negotiate as low as possible. And then make sure you also do evaluation, right? Make sure you get someone to do evaluation, even if it's just evaluation based on the location, based on the floor plans, the architectural plans. They might not be able to do like a full-blown valuation because there's no building to value, but get someone to give you a second opinion on the value that the developer says it's worth, because like I said, you need to validate those numbers. And then look also at properties in the surrounding areas, right? So that's also another way to gauge, you know, how good of an investment this is. Look at properties in the surrounding areas. What is the rental demand? What are the occupancy rates looking like? Like if you're walking in in the nearby vicinity and a lot of the properties there are empty, like that's a red flag. That's an immediate red flag. Or if there are no amenities or it's a low density area, like not a lot of foot traffic, again, red flags that you can look out for to help you make an informed decision. Okay. Perfect. All right. Glad that that has helped you. So smart financing for property investing. Now the vehicle, there are so many different vehicles. I probably haven't even exhausted all the different options here, but these are the ones that I want to just touch on very briefly in the last few minutes, 30 minutes. It's just crazy how time goes so fast. So in the last half an hour of today's session. Now, the vehicle that you're going to use is going to depend on whether you are acquiring or using an existing property to acquire more financing, or you are starting from scratch, right? Now, if you're starting from scratch, this is your very first investment property, then the typical, you know, mortgage is probably what you're going to go for, because that is where, you know, that is where most people start out, right? That's where I started out as well. And that's where most people start out. Just give me a second. There is someone in the room and in the house, and it's I just want to close the door. Okay, I'm back. So yes, so borrowing against an existing asset obviously is beneficial because you're able to, you know, you have a track record of the value of the asset, and banks typically love that because then it's less risky for them, as opposed to like if it's the first time that you're borrowing, or if it's, you know, an asset, the first asset that you're owning, obviously that increases the risk slightly for them, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. Like the first three investment properties, I just went on a traditional mortgage because I wanted to take advantage of my paycheck. And I knew that the minute I left my corporate job, I was going to have to build a much stronger track record of my financials on my business. And just generally, banks are so much more skeptical of lending to businesses than lending to people in their personal capacity. So that's something that I wanted to take the most advantage of while I still had the paycheck, and which is why I went the traditional mortgage route. Okay, so the traditional mortgage route is just like a loan. The only difference is that the interest rates are typically low. It's the lowest type of lowest interest rate loan that you'll typically get from a bank, because it's long term, and also because it's fully secured. So what do I mean when I say fully secured? The bank is going to co-own the property with you, right? So yes, you'll be the owner, but should something ever happen, the bank has a right to sell the property. Like if something happens, God forbid, and you're not able to service the loan, they have the right to then sell that property to recover their money. And once they've recovered their money, if there's anything left over, then you get the leftovers. Okay. So that's how a typical mortgage works. And like I said, if it's smart financing, you should be able to negotiate the term. So the longer the term, the lower the monthly payments, which is good for you at the start, because you need to have as much breathing space as possible. So 20, 25 years, I've even heard of countries that give mortgages at 30 years, which is insane, so long. But that's something that you want to negotiate as much as possible. And the younger you are, the easier it is to negotiate this. So my father recently retired, and because of his age, he wasn't able to get mortgages that were more than 10 years. He uses a completely different property model to me. So he's in the whole, he buys auction properties, and then he creates smaller units within the property, and then he rents the units out to people on a long-term lease. Very different model. But I just wanted to show you how when you have the advantage of the paycheck and your age, you want to take advantage and use that, right, to your advantage as you build your wealth. Okay, so equity releases if you do have an existing property. So like now that I have these 3 properties, I can go back to the bank and say, hey, the value of these properties has increased. Like I can get an independent valuation, and I can show the proof to the bank that the value of these properties has increased, and I want them to do what is called an equity release or a mortgage top-up. And they will be able to lend me more on the basis that this property that they still have a right of sale to, right? That they still have the right to sell in case of anything. This value has increased, and so they are borrowing or they are lending to me on the basis of the increased value. And that way I'm able to get cheaper financing, and I can use that money to pay for a down payment. I can use the money to renovate the place and increase the value even more. I mean, the options are endless. I can even use it to just invest in a typical exchange traded fund, where I literally just put the money there and I do nothing else, and it appreciates in value for me, and the rate of return that I'm getting there is higher than the mortgage rate, and so I benefit from the difference. Bridge financing is where the bank gives you financing. Let's say you own a property that you now want to sell so that you can buy maybe 2 other properties. So let's say you own a property worth 20 million, and now you want to sell it so that you can buy 2 or 3 properties that are worth 6 million each. The bank can give you bridge financing to help you be able to buy those properties that you want to buy as you work on selling your existing property. Of course, bridge financing is going to be more expensive than a traditional mortgage, but it's easier to access, and it's also typically lower. The interest rate will be slightly lower than an unsecured loan. But it's an option that exists. And I also want to share these with you so that you are also empowered, right? Because a lot of times the banks will just talk about mortgage, 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 mortgage. No one is talking about these other forms of financing. And so it's up to you to empower yourself so that you have that knowledge. Another very interesting method of financing that you want to to be aware of is buy-to-let mortgaging. Now, this hasn't caught a lot of momentum in the African markets, but it is something that you can put in your pitch to the bank, or as you're doing your application, you can put a pitch in your application form and say, the purpose of this property that I'm buying, I'm actually not buying it to live in it. I'm buying it as an investment, and I'm buying to rent it out. Let is rent, is the same. Let means the same thing as renting it out. And you can put your cash flow projections. So remember the cash flow calculator that I shared with you all yesterday? There is a section there with projections. So you can share your projections with the bank and say, this is how much you expect to make from this property. And they can use that projected income, rental income, as part of your corporate income to assess how much they are willing to lend out to you. Now, there is a term called your debt to income ratio. Now, the lower your debt to income ratio is, the more financing you have available to you. And you can lower that debt to income ratio by increasing your income, but by also showing them that there's this potential rental income that is going to increase your income. So again, might not necessarily be the thing that the banks say they can do for you, but with being proactive and with some initiative, you can showcase to them why this is a really good opportunity for them to lend out to you. Okay. Now, the last two are more of non-traditional forms of financing. So this is completely going off the banking route. And this is where you go with private funding. So either you are looking for a property investor to help you buy a property, or you can even enter into an arrangement with the previous owner of a property that you want to buy, and you can enter a financing arrangement. And instead of the previous owner paying the mortgage, you pay the mortgage on their behalf, plus a certain extra amount, right? So it's a win-win for them, especially if it's a property that has been on the market for long. You'll be surprised that owners will be willing to listen to such proposals and propositions. Okay. And then angel investing is where, and I've done this for the properties that we recently put on the market, because it turned out that the amount of sort of upfront the upfront renovations that we needed to do on one of them, I wouldn't say was significant, and it's actually, we had planned for them, but because I was putting 3 properties on the market at the same time, something I would not advise anyone to do, it did require a lot of, capital at the exact same time. If I had paced it and had like one property, put it on the market, use that rental income to finance all the renovation costs and needs for the second property, and gradually build and scale my portfolio, then there wouldn't have been a need for me to go the angel financing route. But this is available to anyone. And this is where you now go to individuals who are looking for investment opportunities. And you will be amazed by how many people on your existing network, on your phone list, you will be surprised by how many people would be interested to hear about opportunities. You just need to be able to pitch it right, and you need to have your numbers right, and you need to have done the homework, right? You need to have done the research to make sure that it's a good opportunity, and that will make it so much easier for you to communicate and and be able to get that financing in the form of angel financing. And I'll share a few tips in this slide deck today. Okay. I love your questions, Sylvia. Keep them coming. And ladies, if you have any questions, make sure you keep them coming. I will do my best to answer as many as I can on the call. And remember, we do have the call on Friday to answer any overflow questions. So Sylvia asks, is it wise to take on different mortgage facilities for different properties? Different mortgage facilities for different properties concurrently. Okay, Sylvia, just put in the chat room what exactly you mean, because you can't take more than one mortgage facility on one property, because the bank will have what they call lien, or first right of sale, on that property until you have sold it off. So you won't be able to get another bank to mortgage the same property. Or do you mean different mortgage? Okay, different mortgage facilities for different properties. Yeah, I mean, that's what I do right now. So I have 3 properties that I own with 3 different mortgage facilities. It's the same bank. And you can definitely, consider taking your mortgage facilities with other banks, depending on who gives you the best rate. But I also wanted to be strategic in my relationship building with this bank, because I wanted to continue to showcase my good credit standing and my ability to, to be able to pay, to service my mortgages. And I know that's going to help me, because I'm putting in sort of relationship credits as well. That's going to help me get them to say yes to the next few properties that I want to buy. So I hope that makes sense. And the whole point of what we are doing here is building your portfolio, because one property is great. It's a great start, but you need to scale this up in order to start making that momentum and seeing, significant results and impact on your bank account and your bottom line. All right, so these are some of the things I want you to think about on the smart financing traditional mortgage lending route. So you want to make sure you have a healthy credit standing, right? A healthy credit score. And you can go to credit bureaus and find out what your credit standing is. And I would highly encourage each and every one of you to do this, because I have had stories of clients who didn't even know that certain companies had listed them on credit bureaus, and they had to now go through this whole amount of admin to get that whole cleaned up. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have checked and keep your credit rating positive, keep it healthy, right? And this is something that I talk about a lot in the mastermind. If you want to explore more around this, and I will also be talking about this. It is also in Cashflow Queen in one of the lessons over there. So you want to make sure that you have also been proactive in keeping your credit standing good. So if you have any loans, or if you have any commitments that maybe have been overdue, now is the time to start cleaning that up. You would rather go and negotiate with the bank or the financier if maybe the size of the monthly commitment is something that you're not able to afford. Instead of avoiding the situation or avoiding the conversation, go and negotiate better terms. Go and negotiate a longer term, or a smaller payment that increases gradually, than leaving it there, because that's going to hurt your credit score and your ability to get financing in the long run, right? And this is also going to affect you to even get angel financing, because this is a question that can come up from a potential investor. And of course, you want to be as honest and truthful as you can. If they ask, what's your credit rating? Where do you have any bad debts that you haven't honored, right? You want to be able to answer that confidently. And so it's in your best interest to not avoid it and to address these issues head on. I've already talked about debt to income ratio, but this is an important ratio that banks are going to look at when you are applying for mortgage lending. So just because you have a paycheck does not mean that they're going to automatically say yes. This is also going to dictate how much you can afford to get in the form of mortgage lending. because there is a certain ratio that they want to see you maintaining, which is typically between 25 to 30%. So they do not want to lend to anyone who is paying more than 30% of their income in the form of debt. And if that's the case, I want to encourage you to see how you can fast track paying off any debt that is, especially high interest debt, that is negatively affecting your debt to income ratio. Okay. And there's so many different strategies here. We can talk about them also in the Q&A on Friday. I also want to encourage you, implore you ladies, pay yourself first. If this is not something that you're doing at the moment, after this call, go and automate a transfer from your main transactional account to another bank account where you keep all the money that you pay yourself in, and then decide how you want to invest that money, because just keeping it in a bank account, again, is you're literally losing money. But the first step is you want to start paying yourself. And if you've already been doing this, like most of the women who join my world and join my programs, then pay yourself more. Increase it by at least 10%, because you're going to potentially use this money. This is going to be your cash reserve that you're going to be able to use to pay off any once-off costs, like legal costs, like any down payment. If the bank doesn't finance you 100% and requires you to pay a down payment, you'll be able to use this money, this reserve, to pay for those upfront costs, as opposed to having to go and get an overdraft or a credit card to pay for that, which again isn't necessarily like the worst thing in the world to do, because at least you're using your credit card to pay for an asset that is going to make you money. But paying yourself first and paying yourself more is going to reduce your reliability on alternative forms of debt to make your property investment purchase happen. And then maintain a minimum bank account balance. There is no bank that is not going to ask you for the last 3 to 6 months of your bank statement. And guess what they're looking at? They're looking at your spending habits. They're looking at how much money you have in your bank account. And if you consistently have low to no to zero bank account balance, that speaks to potentially, not having very good practices in managing your money and your finances, and you want to clean that up. So that's something that we can all do right now. You just literally have to pretend like that minimum isn't there. It's not there, it's not available for you to use. And this can be the difference between you getting rejected on mortgage loans to you getting approved. All right, so take it seriously. And then you want to start looking at pre-approvals or pre-qualifications. Now, a pre-approval or a pre-qualification does not mean that you are now tied and obligated to take out the mortgage. It is simply an indication of how much the bank is willing to lend out to you and what is the maximum that they're willing to lend. This is very valuable information, because this can help you filter out the kind of properties that you have a budget for. Okay, so it costs you nothing to ask the bank for pre-approval or pre-qualification. And if you do have a relationship banker, pick up the phone after this call and ask them if they can arrange this for you. They'll probably ask you for certain information like your paycheck, your 3 months bank statement, and share it as it is, because this can also be very insightful for you. And you can ask for feedback on what are some of the things that I need to work on to get more financing, right? And you can start to work on those gradually. And then you also want to do some research on first-time mortgage arrangements. So the first mortgage that I got for property investment purposes, another reason we got 100% financing for it was because it was the first time, right? And other parameters that banks are looking to lend more to women. So use that as an advantage, ladies. And there might also be first-time mortgage schemes that your bank or other banks have, where the mortgage terms are so much more favorable than someone who is getting a mortgage for the second or third time. So make sure you do that research and see all the different no mortgage that your bank has offered is the one and only option you have available to you. Now, when it comes to angel investing, like I said, you have an existing network and sphere of influence that is willing to hear you out and that is willing to invest in your property opportunities. The thing is, you need to do this many times. So you're not just going to ask the first person and they'll say yes. If they do, awesome, like celebrate it. But you're probably going to have your opportunity multiple times. And I know this is not comfortable because as women, we do not like rejection. We do not like putting ourselves in uncomfortable positions where we are asking and there's a potential for someone to say no. But trust me, in the long run, this is going to help you become a better investor. And it's going to help you clean up on the blind sides and blind spots that maybe you don't realize from the opportunities that you are pitching. Okay. A quick, what they call the elevator pitch. And this is a sort of quick introduction that you're going to give people when you are networking with them. And so once you exhaust your existing network, you want to start networking with other people. So property investment groups, online forums where people are talking about property, property investment clubs, like the options are endless. But you want to make sure that you come across, of course, knowing what you are doing and having that quick pitch so that you do not, fall on your feet when you're introducing yourself can be a game changer, right? Because first impressions do actually last, all right? Yeah, right. So you can use ChatGPT to create and craft a really great pitch that is going to open doors and that is going to have people listening in more to the opportunities that you have to pitch to them. Okay, so put yourself in the room. Like, don't be afraid to put yourself in rooms where people are having these conversations. And if you're not in those rooms, I want you to think of how you can get yourself in those rooms, right? How you can expand your conversations around wealth creation and investing, how you can empower yourself more in topics around property investing, because people also want to invest in confidence. People also want to invest in people who know what they're talking about, right? And of course, this is going to come with time, and over time, you're going to increase your level of insights and understanding of property and et cetera, but start empowering yourself now. Because all of these things I have shared on this deck, on this page, you can start doing them today. If you decide and you're fully in and committed, you do not have to wait. You can literally start doing it today. Okay. So your homework today is to find out what your credit rating is, and you can look at credit bureaus to do this. I also want you to look at how much are you paying yourself first at the moment. Now, paying yourself first is when you pay yourself from your take-home income. So the day or a few days at most after your take-home income hits your bank account, there should be a transaction that has sent money from your transactional account to a different account, and that money is for purposes nothing else. It is not even an emergency fund or an overflow fund. It is for purposes of investing. So how much are you paying yourself first at the moment? If not, I want you to start paying yourself and automate it. Set it and forget it. When you set an automated transfer from that transactional account to a different account, that's it. Like, you know that it's always going to be coming out, and you don't have to think about it and get yourself worked up in the emotions and decisions around it, because that decision is already made for you. And this is going to be a huge game changer in you being able to say yes to property investing opportunities without having to think through, oh, how am I going to pay for the down payment? I also need to pay the legal fees. Where's the cash to do the renovations and to buy the furnishing, and et cetera, right? And then I also want you to decide on your minimum bank account balance. Most people haven't really decided on this, and they just haphazardly go through life. I want you to be very intentional around this area, and I want you to decide on what that is going to be and commit to doing that, to having that as your minimum balance going forward. And this is on your main transactional account. Okay. Then the next step for those who are really up for the challenge, remember this is a challenge, is to ask for a pre-qualification. And like I said, this is not a commitment you're making. You just want to find out how much you qualify for, and the bank will be willing to give this to you, subject to you furnishing certain information. Okay. And try and also do some research against other banks as well. So your main bank is not necessarily the only bank that you should be considering, because others might be willing to give you an even better rate, right? So make sure you do the comparisons. But if you just do the pre-qualification from the bank, like, that's good enough. And I'll be so, so proud of you, because you're literally taking action. And like I said, on day 2 and day 1, action takers are money makers, and money makers are action takers. You've got to get yourself used to taking uncomfortable action. You've got to get yourself out of the procrastination habit. You've got to get yourself into taking action no matter what, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. And also being able to use the results of your action to refine what you need to do going forward. Okay. And then once you've gotten, this is probably not going to happen immediately, but you can start to look at different scenarios in terms of the mortgage estimates that maybe once you start getting, and start looking at what the cap rate looks like. Remember, yesterday we looked at, your homework was to look at one property potential, put in the numbers in the corporate to cash flow calculator, and look at what the average return is, which is what we call cap rate in property investing. And now you can refine that by putting in mortgage estimates once you get those. Okay, perfect. We have finished for the day, and I am so, so happy that you have all stuck to the challenge. I'm so proud of you. Tell me if you have any questions. Make sure you share them on the WhatsApp group, or you can share them in the chat thread below. I will keep the chat open for 1 more minute. Remember, if you want to seriously give yourself a head start into 2025, now is the time to do so. And Cashflow Queen, the live course with the coaching component, is where you can really accelerate things, right? As you can see in here, like, I have served as much as possible with the 1 hour we have, but there is only so much I can talk about in this 1 hour. So make sure you get into Cashflow Queen. I only have 10 spaces, and the $167 offer ends on Friday midnight. Okay. I don't see any other questions, so I will see you for tomorrow, day 4, and have a lovely rest of the day, everyone. Bye.